Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's a great day to think about preparing for tours and events on a farm. My name is April McLean. I'm the Public Trust Coordinator with the Federation of Agriculture. And with me is Katie Hurdle. She is our Emergency Management Coordinator. And we're going to talk you through some of the things to consider if you've been asked to host an event on farm. So if you've been asked to host, the first thing to do is certainly learn more about the event and the person making that request and what it is that they want and they need. How many people are they hoping to bring? Are they a group of grade 3 students or a group of DAL AC students, or maybe they are industry partners or government staffers, or maybe it is a group of members of the public or partners in farmers markets. There could be a range of people interested in learning more about your farm, and it's important to know who they might be and what their goals might be. When do they want to visit? Are they thinking of coming at a time of year when you have the capacity to be able to host them? What sorts of things are happening on your farm at that time? And consider their goals. What is it that they're trying to learn about, and are you able to meet those goals? Think about what kinds of topics you might cover, how you would address any questions they might have, and think about the risks. Certainly from a biosecurity standpoint, there could be risks. Katie, if you want to speak a little bit about that.
There's always risks on farm to biosecurity when you have guests of any kind. Sometimes those risks are what your farm presents, and sometimes those risks are what those guests bring with them. So it's really important to be aware of what areas that they'd like to see, which ones you want them to see. Are there any recent disease outbreaks? And have your visitors consider their own exposure. And again, you need to double check your insurance policy as well to make sure that you're covered for visits of those sorts of nature, and you may need waivers.
Absolutely. So once you know that you are interested in hosting this particular group, it's time to think about some of the logistics. So take a walk down the path that you expect to follow during the tour or during the event. Think about things like, are the pathways clear enough to accommodate a group of this size? Is there enough standing room for folks here? Do we need to provide any seating? Think about what the sound levels are like around you. Is there equipment that comes on and off and might make noise? Could you shut it off for a little while? Make sure people are going to be able to hear you. And speaking of sound levels, we need to think about our livestock needs as well. I have seen how wearing the wrong boot protection, for instance, can cause a lot of noise when a group of people is walking through with hard plastic boot covers and scratching up the concrete floor. It really does drive livestock a bit crazy sometimes. So making sure that our PPE and the group of people coming in are respectful of the needs of our livestock as well is important. And we want to make sure that we think about signage. Do we need caution tape to keep people out of certain areas, or to remind them not to pet the animals? Do we need to have some assistance from staff or family members to help us with the group, to perhaps provide information to the group or to help keep the group together? And we also want to think about, are there any areas where putting up posters or pictures or playing a video might be useful to the group? Maybe it's a picture or video of some of your harvest processes if people are visiting in May or June, but you don't harvest until September, October. Think about what kinds of work is going to be going on the farm at the time that these folks want to visit. If it is harvest season, how do you make sure that you have time to give people the best view that they can while keeping everyone safe and making sure that the work that needs to get done still gets done? Maybe it's the time of day and folks want to come at 11, but that's normally the time you milk. So you'd want to think about, can I still milk at the same time while also hosting this tour and giving them a really great opportunity to see how that happens? Think about any areas that maybe you don't want photographed, any areas you don't want people visiting, and think about your parking and turning space to make sure that you have adequate space for everyone coming in. And it's also important to think about safety on the farm. And we'll talk a bit about biosecurity, but we also want to make sure that our tour guests are aware in advance of how to make themselves safe on farm. So we have a checklist that we'll be providing at the end of the webinar that you can actually send out to group organizers in advance so that their folks know that they're going to be asked about things like recent farm visits, whether they have any livestock on the farm, whether they've done international travel in the last 48 hours. And they're going to get to know that they need closed-toed shoes, non-slip shoes, that they might be walking through a foot bath, that they should bring or wear clothing that is clean and free from any farm debris, that they'll be needing to wash their hands, that maybe they need to remain in the vehicle until you or your staff come to help them put on any PPE that they might need. And we want to make sure that they know about the photography rules or any waivers in advance as well. And you'll cover those things with a safety briefing again when they arrive. But it's great to have that information out to them in advance. And you also want to work out details about how you're going to physically block any areas that you don't want people visiting. You want to ensure that all the routes are safe for public access and make sure that either you have enough PPE for people or that the group is bringing enough. You also want to make sure that you develop a biosecurity plan, and Katie's going to tell us a little bit about that.
So when you develop a biosecurity plan on farm, especially for visitors, it's really important that you simply communicate what they need to know. Be that putting on disposable coveralls, hand sanitizing, putting on boot covers, just establishing what type of PPE that is required and any emergency procedures your facility may require. That also includes maybe noting any exit routes that might be required during an event. You want to keep a logbook and have folks sign in and out. You may also wish that they acknowledge if they've had farm exposure or they have livestock at home. We want to designate parking areas, entry and exit routes. Farm visit season is often pothole season. If you have a large bus entering your farmyard, that bus is moving on to another facility for tours, if you at all possible, try to fill in those potholes and smooth that out a little bit so they can mostly park on a dry, hard surface. And that prevents any disease transfer from one location to another, splashing up on the wheel wells of vehicles. You want to provide a hand washing opportunity or a sanitizing station, and that could be as simple as using a alcohol-based sanitizer. But if you have a space for people to wash their hands, make sure that somebody's looking after that as well, so it's clean and tidy, and any paper towel is cleaned up, and so it keeps everyone safe. We want to make sure that your staff and any of your volunteers know what the expectations are for the day. I like to tell people that a boot dip is only as good as the person who maintains it. Lots of traffic through a boot dip makes that disinfectant spend quickly and may need to be changed quite frequently depending on what product you use and how many visitors you have. You want to limit animal contact. We all know everybody loves to pet the lambs and they love to pet the calves. But again, make sure that there's some hand sanitizing available for them and remind people that they do need to wash their hands post-visit by all means. Ask your staff to keep an eye on people that they don't wander out of the zone that you'd really like them to be in. And one comment on waste management is when we are finished with a farm visit, there tends to be a lot of garbage when it comes to disposable PPE. Ideally, that garbage stays on the farm and doesn't go on with the bus or the folks who are leaving. So really important to have garbage cans, bags ready, and don't be afraid to ask your organizer who's arriving for assistance in getting people cleaned up, and that they don't leave you with a mess to clean up behind. That's all bagged up neat and tidy at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yes, your organizers are your best friends in that respect, because they will definitely help you to make sure that all of that is taken care of. And that'll be part of what we talk about with the organizers in advance of the event. We always want to make sure we maintain communication with these organizers and that they have all the information they need, including the checklist to prep their attendees, a map of the farm with the parking area highlighted, any entry points, like if they want to use the correct driveway, all of that can be put on a Google map. We want to make sure they have your accurate civic address, your cell number, and expectations are clearly laid out, like the walking distance, the type of terrain, and how long a visitor tour might be, as well as a copy of your safety plan and biosecurity plan. And a list of the questions you'd be asking visitors as well in terms of their travel recently. And in terms of the information you're going to want to make sure that you get, you want to confirm the schedule with the organizers, have them send you final visitor numbers a day or two in advance, and make sure you have their cell number in case you need it, that they organize any photo releases that are needed, and that they're aware that you will have a logbook on site for everyone to sign in and out. And it is always a good idea to check the CFIA website before the event, just in case. Then we come to event day, which is always my favorite day. It is definitely a day for some last minute tidying up, last minute tasks, a final walkthrough of the tour route to make sure that everything is ready. And then we want to make sure we're ready to greet guests in the parking area when they arrive, to help them put on PPE before they get out of vehicles, if that's part of your plan, and to go through the visitor screening, get them to sign the logbook. And once everyone has gathered, it's time for a quick overview of the farm and what people can expect to see and hear. And to let everyone know that Q&A, questions and answers are always welcome, and that you will be able to address them throughout the tour as people are going, and for them not to be shy at all with questions. And the safety briefing would be the next step, still again in that parking area, covering all of the topics identified in your biosecurity plan, like the interaction with livestock, making sure that folks remain with the group, that they take responsibility for their own safety as well, and keep their heads up and eyes open for watching for any hazards, reminding them to keep their hands off equipment, and assigning at least one person, if not more, to be the group leader and to be the back of that train, making sure that everyone follows along and stays together. And then we get into the fun part, moving on to talking about your farm and what you do and what you grow, talking about your daily work. You know, people don't necessarily know what's involved in running a farm on a day-to-day basis. And that, you know, not every day is the same. So you can talk about your seasonal work. For instance, if you run an orchard and people are visiting in May, maybe the apple blossoms are on the trees, but you can talk as well about, you know, the pathways and the laneways between your trees and how that's set to just the right width for your equipment so that your team, as they're working, can reach both sides as they're coming along. You know, those kinds of things that people just wouldn't recognize and wouldn't know. Maybe you might have a video playing of that equipment in action and the crew harvesting later in the season from the last season. Talk about some of the equipment that you use, whether it is a, you know, a high-tech sprayer or a specialized shovel that just does exactly the job you need. It's a very low-tech solution that is a perfect fit for you and your needs. When it comes to technology, people love it, whether that's new technology or people making use of technology that's been around for hundreds of years. Talk about your animals if you have any. People absolutely love to learn about how animals are raised, what their lives are like on farm, and people will see your connection with your livestock. They will feel that care that you give, and that builds trust and builds a connection between the public and the food industry. Talk about the types of crops that you have, you know, when they're planted, how they're grown, what varieties are used, why different varieties exist. You know, a lot of people know that we have different varieties of apples, but they may not know how many or how they're developed. They may not even know, for instance, that, you know, there are hundreds of varieties of cherry tomatoes. There are a lot of things that people can learn when they come on a tour of a farm or at a farm event. And from my perspective as the public trust coordinator, one of the biggest things they can learn is that you care about what you do. And that's not something that you have to say, but they'll feel that in their interaction with you. This picture is a trip to Vermeulen Farms last year during the Devour Food Festival in Wolfville. And we were there on October 25th. And we ate the very last strawberries of his season in his hoop tunnel. And we blew the minds of all of these foodies that had come from the city and from out of province that Nova Scotia could grow strawberries in October, and could grow them in the way that Andy does. And his excitement was palpable. People knew that he loved what he did, and they could feel that he did it in a way that made sure that that food is safe for everybody and delicious for everybody and available for as long a season as it can be. So let yourself be excited. Let yourself be proud of what you're doing. People will feel that and learn from that and respect that. And wherever possible, try to demonstrate what it is that you do. So on the same tour event last year at Devour, we went to Melvin Farms, and Alan brought out a tractor with a planting machine on the back for his green onions. And he showed us how the little green onion seedlings travel from the trays down into the gears and into the teeth and into the ground. And so even though he wasn't actually planting, the group understood how that equipment worked and why it was important for him and his operation. And then Alan took us across to the cauliflower field, where this group of foodies from, again, all over the place were just absolutely excited to see cauliflower growing. And for gardeners and for farmers, this can be a pretty ordinary run-of-the-mill experience. But we have to think about the fact that these folks have, their generations removed from being on a farm. They don't have that lived experience. They don't have that knowledge. And as foodies, they get super excited when they see it. So I don't know if any of our hosts that day had ever had their picture taken that often. But people loved seeing how to pick a piece of cauliflower and how to use a machete to trim the leaves off. And they loved it, and it was wonderful. And all of our tour hosts have been really great about taking questions throughout the tours. And that's something that we definitely recommend that anyone hosting events does, because people are interested and they do want to know. But we do also want to remember that it's always okay to say, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you. And let the organizer know that you'll get an answer to them for them to send out to the group. And these events are also a really great time to address any misconceptions people may have about food and farming, and use facts and examples from your farm in plain language to help inform them and give them the real information and help them change whatever opinion they might have formed based on that misinformation. And as you're wrapping up your event, we want to make sure that we gather everyone, walk us back through to the parking area, taking any final questions, having any little final comments, and making sure they know to check your website or your social media. We also then thank them for visiting and help guide the removal of PPE. And Katie, can you talk us a little bit through how this part of the process would work?
So for anyone who's had to remove PPE, especially if you're wearing disposable coveralls, it can be really awkward. You may wish to provide a chair outside that people can lean on or sit on as well, depending on the accessibility of your facilities. But make sure that that PPE doesn't touch the ground again, ball it all up inside itself, boots, gloves, whatever they happen to be wearing. Dispose of it in a garbage bag and make sure those are tied off and left on site. And make sure that your guests remember to wash and sanitize their own hands before they go home. If they've got livestock of their own at home, they should change their footwear and their clothing before they head back into their own facilities. And when we get groups of visitors who are new to farming and maybe have never handled livestock or touched livestock, I always use the example of everybody loves to pet the calves, and then somebody goes home with E. coli without washing their hands. So just that reminder to wash their hands, because we don't want not only our livestock to get sick, we don't want our guests to get sick while they're there either. So just those gentle reminders to make sure they wash and sanitize when they head back home again, and encourage them to wash their vehicles if they're in there, but if they've arrived by car on their own before they go home.
And part of what we are providing as part of this webinar is, as I mentioned before, checklists for people in advance of the visit. But we also have some information for the organizer to give to folks as they leave to make sure they monitor their own health and look after washing their own clothes and shoes. And there are a few things you can do on farm as well to help keep your farm safe. Katie?
So if your guests have happened to use the washroom in your facility, make sure you sanitize that washroom again for your own staff and families to use. Any equipment that they may have handled may need to be washed and disinfected again. You may want to sit down, probably not the day of the event, but maybe in the days following, but to review your biosecurity plan with your staff and your family to see where there were holes or areas of improvement that you might be able to make. And again, you'll want to monitor your own livestock health throughout the next few days just to make sure that nothing has arrived on farm you weren't expecting.
Absolutely. So folks, I hope that this has been helpful for you. And I hope that if an opportunity comes to host people on farm, that you will be able to make use of the checklist and information we're providing. Those will be found on the Federation of Agriculture's website under Public Trust. And certainly if you have questions or if a group is reaching out wanting to organize a tour and you just like to chat that through with us or maybe partner with us, we can certainly have those conversations. Our contact information is always on the Federation of Agriculture's website as well, and it is here on this slide. So if you do have questions or anything comes up that you think we can help with, please do reach out. And thanks so much for being with us today. Have a great day, everybody.